grab your coffee, grab your starter, and let's go. Hey y'all, I'm Shelby, and I'm going to show you how I bake my sourdough bread. Now, I know that there are like 50 million different ways that people bake sourdough bread. This is just how I do it. I'm fairly new at it. I just started my own sourdough starter from scratch back in like the late summer, early fall. And I have given some of my sourdough to some of my friends at work, and they're a little bit confused. Julie, I'm looking at you. And so I told them that I would take this opportunity on YouTube to do like a little sourdough bake along. So I'm going to show you exactly what I do step by step. So for starters, what I suggest everybody do if they don't know how to make sourdough is, if you're given a good amount of sourdough, this is a little bit too much for me to be using, I suggest you get another little jar and take some out and have some in reserve. Just pop it in the back of your fridge. That way, if something happens and you mess up the sourdough starter that you were given, you've got a little bit in reserve. You don't have to do that. That's just a good thing that I do if you are not familiar with sourdough. Now, I always use a wooden spoon. I don't ever use metal with it. I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to, but I don't really honestly know the reason why. Before I actually got all of the nifty sourdough like things, I did just have like a small wooden spoon, like something like that or whatever, that you can just get down in the jar. This one is very narrow, so it's awesome to use. So I'm just going to take a little bit out of the big jar and put it in the small jar just to have a little bit in reserve. So it's about 8 o'clock in the morning. Today is a day off for me. We've got a little bit of snow. Well, we've got ice in North Carolina right now. So it will vary what time you need to be feeding your sourdough, because you do need to allot a little bit of time. So I'm off today, so I'm doing it first thing in the morning. What I do is I take my sourdough jar with maybe 2 tablespoons in the bottom of it. Not much. You don't need a whole lot, because if you have a whole lot, it kind of messes your ratios up. So I've got my sourdough starter in my jar. I've got some all-purpose flour, and then I've got lukewarm water. Now, you do not want your water to be like scalding hot. I don't really want it to be cold either, so just warm to the touch. Now I'm going to turn you around, and I use a kitchen scale just because it's easier to get precise measurements with a kitchen scale, but you don't have to use that. Just find a recipe that uses cups instead of like grams, but I do find grams is sometimes a little bit more accurate. So the first thing that you do after you've got your little jar of reserve, which you don't have to do, that's optional, you need to find a recipe that you want to use. Now, if you are given a sourdough, sometimes your friend might share their recipe with you. So the recipe that I use, it calls for 100 grams of starter. So you need 100 grams in this jar. Now, I always want to leave the little bit of scrapings, like 2 tablespoons, at the bottom of this jar, always. So what I do is, if it calls for 100 grams of starter, I'm going to use 50 grams flour, 50 grams water, which equals out to 100. I don't do math, but that's fairly easy. But me personally, I like to always make sure that I have enough left in my jar, so I do a little bit more than 50, just so I make sure that I can keep enough in the jar. So we'll go like 55 grams of flour, 55 grams of water, just to be on the safe side. You don't have to use it. You can throw it out. You can use it in pancake recipes or whatever. So I'm going to turn you around and show you how I mix it. Move it back so you can see it. And I'm going to put this directly into my jar. Alright, so I got 56. That's alright. I'm not worried about that. So, got my flour in my jar here. Get you close to the light, maybe you can see. Now, I've actually already measured the water, so I'm just going to pour my lukewarm water into my jar, and it's already the 55 grams. Now, all I'm going to do is just stir that up really, really well. Now, I scrape down the sides to make sure that it's all incorporated. Now, this is what I do. So, I always turn the light on in my oven, and I will pop it in my oven just to give it a warm place for the next 4-ish hours. Now, what we want it to do is we want it to rise for about 4 hours. That's why I kind of patted everything down. I put a hair bow on the bottom. We want this to double in size, so that's the reason why I put it there, just as a little marker. So if you see people putting stuff like that on their jars, that's why. So this is where we're starting, and we want it to double in size before we use it, and that'll be in the next step. So pop this in a warm place, put it in your oven with only the light on. Do not turn the oven on, Julie. Don't turn the oven on. Or on top of your fridge. It's really cold in my house, so nowhere outside of the oven is a good option for me. So I've got these cute little topper things that just go on the jar, but you could lightly put the lid on. You can put a paper towel, just drape a towel over, whatever you've got. So step 1 complete. Yeah, I know, don't judge me for all of the pans, but I've got the light on, and we'll see you in 4 hours. Any of it. Okay, so we're ready for step 2 now. Our starter has officially doubled, maybe a little bit over doubled. So step 2 is going to be to mix our dough together. So I'm going to take starter, some bread flour, salt, honey, and we're going to mix it all together. So I'm going to turn you around so you can see. Okay, so to our bowl, I'm going to add 375 grams of water. Make sure that your scale is set to grams, not ounces. And then I'm going to do 100 grams of starter. So I'm going to tear the scale out to where it's at 0. And then we're going to add 100 grams of the starter. And you want it to float. If it floats, that means you're usually pretty safe to bake with, that it'll rise for you. And I've got a dough whisk here that I'm just gonna mix it up. And we're gonna tear it out again and add 20 grams of honey. Mix it again. And we're going to tear it out and add 500 grams of bread flour. We're going to mix it up really good. And I like to do my salt separately so I don't put too much. So I put the lid on my scale, tear it out. So I'm going to add 10 grams of salt. Some people add the salt later in the process, but I do it all at the same time and it usually does fine. Now that we've got it all mixed up, I took a tea towel and put some warm water on it. So I'm going to put the damp tea towel over top, and then we're going to pop it back in the oven with the light on for 30 minutes and let it rest. Now that we've got our dough mixed up, I used the majority. There's nothing but scrapings in the bottom of this, so I want to make sure that I keep this alive and active for the next batch of bread. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of scrape down the sides, and then I'm going to feed it just a little bit because I'm not wanting to bake again. So I'm just going to do a couple tablespoons of flour and then just a little bit of water. Like I said, I'm not measuring. You just want it to look like pancake batter. So I'm just going to mix that up and make sure to scrape down the sides so you get all of that starter that you just activated. And this is a little dry, so I'm going to add a little bit more water. You don't want to add too much. Now, after you have fed your starter a little bit, if you're going to bake with it in the next day or two, you can leave it out on the counter, or you can just pop it in the fridge. I'm going to pop mine in the fridge, and I'm putting my little topper back on. You can put a lid on, you can put a towel over it, and then just wait until the next time you're ready to bake, and then you can feed again the 50-gram starter, or excuse me, 50 grams flour, 50 grams water to your starter, and you're ready to bake again. Okay, it's been 30 minutes since we mixed the dough, so I took it out, and this is what it looks like. I'm gonna wet my hand and do our first round of stretch and fold. So with a wet hand, I'm just gonna kind of pull the dough up and stretch it over itself about 4 times, pretending that it's like got a corner at each, and just stretch it up and fold it over. And that is our first round of stretch and folds. Okay, it's been 15 minutes since our last stretch and fold, so same process. I wet my hand, I'm gonna pull up, and you can see it's getting a little bit more structure to the dough. Alright, it's been another 15 minutes. This is our third stretch and fold. And that looks pretty good with the structure. It still breaks apart a little bit, but that's alright. And we'll let it go for another 15 minutes and do our last stretch and fold. Alright, so this is the last stretch and fold. This is number 4, and then I'm gonna put it in the oven with the light on, or you could leave it on the counter if it's warm in your house, for like 4 to 8 hours until it's about doubled in size. Okay, so the bread has been in the oven with the light on since 2 o'clock, I believe. Was it 2 o'clock? Do you know? Since 2 o'clock, and it's about 6 o'clock now. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to shape the dough, and then I'm gonna put it in a banneton. This has a little bit of brown rice flour in it. If you don't have this, because I didn't have it for the longest time, put all-purpose flour down in a bowl that has a tea towel in it, and the next step's going to be putting it in the fridge. So I'm going to use this since I actually have this now, but you don't have to use any of this, and you can still make it work. I do a tri-fold, so I fold one end over itself and then fold it back down and then roll it the other way. And you'll take this seam side and just kind of pinch it together, and when you put it down, you'll want the seam side up, and I just kind of pinch it together. Now, some people might fold it different. That's just the way I do it. You can do it however you want to, I guess. And I have an actual little cover. It's like you could do a shower cap or anything like that. Kurt bought me this nifty cover for it. So what I'll do is I will put this in the fridge, and I will probably bake this tomorrow morning whenever I get up. And I will show you how I do that in the morning. Okay, it has officially been 24, well, almost 24, 25 hours since we started this whole process. It is the next morning, so I am going to take my bread out of the fridge and we're about to bake it. So I'm going to show you my whole process for doing that. Okay, so I have a piece of parchment paper here, and I'm just going to dump my loaf out on this piece of parchment paper, and then we will get started on the baking. And you can do any pretty design. You can just do one big cut down the middle. I usually like to get a little creative with it, so I usually will do a big cut and then do some little viney-like things. And then that's about it. Now, I've got my Dutch oven preheated in the oven at 450, so I'm just going to drop it in. It's been 30 minutes in the oven with the lid on, so I'm going to take the lid off and continue baking for another, like, maybe 8-10 minutes.